Explosions at the Boston Marathon sent runners to the ground and spectators running for their lives. The latest on the bombings in Boston tonight on KPBS Evening Edition.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Eric Anderson in for Dwayne Brown. Boston police now say that 3 people are dead after today's bombing at the Boston Marathon. More than 100 people were hurt when a pair of bombs went off near the finish line. Police say the explosions were very powerful and some of the injuries are grave. The FBI is taking the lead on the investigation tonight, and agents say it could become a terrorist investigation. There are no suspects so far.
This cowardly act will not be taken in stride. We will turn every rock over to find the people who are responsible for this.
The bombs exploded 4 hours into the race, leaving behind shattered glass and terrified spectators and racers. About 23,000 people competed in this year's marathon, and about 100 of them were from San Diego. KPBS was able to reach some of those runners by phone.
When the first blast went off, you could just feel it just reverberating through your body. But everybody on the sidewalks, the streets, everything, were just frozen time. And then the second went off. And then that was where everybody knew this was really serious. And we just saw tons of people just rushing, trying to get away from the finish line as fast as they possibly could.
And I walked into the park, and I heard the 2 explosions. And it sounds like a Camp Pendleton explosion.
And I thought, this is a lot more sirens than I was hearing earlier, and there's a lot more helicopters in the air. So I thought maybe a lot of people had been injured racing. But, like, the people started walking towards me, and I was walking towards where it happened because that's where I live. And I was wondering, should I be turning around? And eventually people started texting me, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And then I Googled it to see why people were asking me that, and that's when I found out.
I'm absolutely devastated. I weep because this is a sporting event that so many people train their lives for, and to target a soft target like this, to me it's heart-wrenching.
The voices of San Diegans who were near the bombing. The San Diego Track Club says all of its runners are all right tonight. Boston police say they didn't receive any indication of potential trouble before the race. A senior U.S. official says 2 other bombs were found near the end of the race course. Boston firefighters were also called to the John F. Kennedy Library just a few miles from the race's finish line. A fire did start there. Police say it may have been started by an incendiary device, but tonight they're saying it doesn't appear to be linked to the bombings. President Barack Obama responded to the explosions with a promise that whoever is responsible will feel the full weight of justice. And he told the people of Boston that the rest of the nation stands with them.
Boston is a tough and resilient town, so are its people. I'm supremely confident that Bostonians will pull together, take care of each other, and move forward as one proud city. And as they do, the American people will be with them every single step of the way.
The Secret Service expanded the security perimeter around the White House, and many Southern California locations have also stepped up security. San Diego police and sheriff's deputies are on heightened alerts. San Diego Harbor Police are taking specific steps to protect public safety, and they're ready to respond if a situation occurs. There are increased patrols at airports and harbors in the Los Angeles area, and the LA Police Department is planning to increase its presence at tonight's Dodgers game against the San Diego Padres. San Diego hosts the Rock and Roll Marathon in June. Its organizers are saying today that they are reviewing their security plans. And here's what we know at this moment. 4 hours into the Boston Marathon, a pair of bombs exploded near the finish line. 3 people were killed. At this moment, we don't know whether they were runners or spectators. More than 100 people are now reported injured. Investigators don't know who set off the bombs, and so far, no one has claimed responsibility. The FBI is now taking the lead in the investigation, and they say it could become a terrorist investigation. Our coverage of this story will continue through the evening online at kpbs.org, also on the PBS NewsHour at 7. And tune into KPBS Radio for regular updates tonight and all the latest on Morning Edition tomorrow morning. Looking now at some of the other stories making headlines today, the long fight over San Diego's tourism marketing district is over. Today, Mayor Bob Filner signed an agreement releasing funds to the agency. The TMD promotes San Diego as a vacation spot. Filner objected to the original agreement and he vetoed the deal. His signature did come hours before the city council was supposed to vote on whether to override that veto. More news from the mayor's office. Today he unveiled his first budget. The $2.75 billion spending plan is a tenth of a percentage point smaller than last year's budget. It calls for an increase in spending on basic city services. Cutbacks include a delay in debt service payments to a capital improvements bond and more than $1 million from the city attorney's office. The San Diego Police Department is asking for $28 million to hire and retain more police officers. There's been an officer exodus. Peggy Pico explains what's going on.
San Diego's police force is short by about 100 officers, and more than half of the force will reach retirement eligibility in the next 4 years. That's according to a recent report by the San Diego Police Officer Association. But that's just one of the retention issues facing the department. Here with further details are Sergeant Jeff Jordan, Vice President of the San Diego Police Officers Association, and City Council member Marty Emerald, Chair of San Diego's Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy.
Jeff, what has the San Diego Police Department been doing in order to prepare for what works out to be about 900 officers being ready to retire?
Well, first we put together a 5-year plan, represented the Police Officers Association along with the police department, looked at our needs going from 5 years and what we would need to kind of bring staffing up to where we acceptable levels would be, by hiring 300 more officers. That's going to be very hard to do because we're also on the back end, as you mentioned, upwards of half our police department can retire, and we're seeing significant attrition from our younger officers. Upwards of 30% of the officers that we've hired since 2005 have left, 255 out of the 888 we hired since 2005.
And we're going to come back to the sort of the retention issues and the cost on that. But Marty, I want to talk to you. Where does that 5-year budget stand, or 5-year plan stand right now? And as far as the budget that the mayor released today, what has he made provisions for in going forward in these next 5 years?
Right. The mayor is proposing an extra $4 million this coming year to increase the number of academies so that we can bring in more officers and to provide for more equipment for other public safety agencies. But it doesn't come close to meeting our needs.
What about that 5-year blueprint?
Right. Last July, it was approved at the Public Safety Neighborhood Services Committee to go into effect in this new fiscal year, in 2014, the one that we're going to be discussing at council and with the mayor's office over the course of the next 6 weeks or so. We did kickstart it, though. We put some extra money in for the rest of this fiscal year so we could get those academies going. It's just so crucial to get the numbers up, to get the right people recruited for police work, to get them through academies, to get them through the training, and headed toward what we think is a really good career in law enforcement here in San Diego.
Right, and as you mentioned, that $4 million doesn't quite make it.
Doesn't come close to it,
Since we're talking about money, I want to do this, that one of the things in this new report is about salaries, about police pay. And from what I understand from a January report a little while ago, with the exception of El Cajon, officers who average the least amount of salary in the area, they are in El Cajon, they're about $67,000 a year. San Diego police are the lowest paid in the county at a little more than $74,000 a year, followed by Escondido's salaries at more than $77,000, and San Diego County sheriffs earning more than $80,000 a year. Jeff, how significant is the salaries in retaining these police officers that are recruited?
It's everything. compensation is everything right now. And I'll tell you, just the salary number, you can't just look at the salary number and understand that's just one element of a total compensation package. What we're seeing is our officers who have families are paying upwards of $7,000 or $8,000 a year out of pocket to purchase family health care through the city of San Diego. Healthcare costs are extremely high and they're rising. In addition to that, our pension contributions may raise upwards of 17–18% of our salary. People don't really think about that roughly 20 to 25% of our salary is going towards pension as well as healthcare costs even before taxes hit. So this looking at salary is just one element of it, and really what you need to look at is the total compensation package. It's everything that you get, and you try to break it down to what it is per hour, per employee, and we are just not competitive.
And remember, that's the average salary. Coming in, new police officers aren't making nearly that average. So it's a real
recruiting
struggle.
them, it impacts the recruitment as well.
Right. What Marty said is our new hire for us, every 2 weeks can expect to take home about $1,400 every 2 weeks. Compared to what they can get upwards of $1,000 or $1,500 more a month by going to another agency. That's what Marty's stressing is. That's where the real problem is right now.
Right. Some would argue that crime, except for the last couple of months, have actually over the years been going down. Violent crimes the last few months has showed something differently. So Marty, I want to start with you. A lot of people would argue we're doing just fine with the less police and paying them less. Why do we need to spend more money? Why do we need more police officers?
I think over the course of the last several years with the crime rate going down, it really needs to be attributed to the professionalism of our police employees out there in the community, working often on their own time, responding to calls as quickly as they can. But the warning went out a decade ago when the cuts really started happening at San Diego PD that if we keep cutting, we're going to hit a point where we can't stretch resources any longer, and that's where we've come.
And that's where we've come right now. Unfortunately, we are out of time. So Marty Emerald and Jeff Jordan, thank you so much for talking with us today.
You bet. Thank you.
Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is canceling a controversial new medal for drone operators and cyber warriors. The proposed Distinguished Warfare Medal would have been ranked higher than combat medals like the Bronze Star or the Purple Heart. And that prompted some complaints from veteran groups. So instead of a medal, Hagel wants a special pin or a device that can be attached to existing ribbons. The average price of a gallon of self-serve regular gasoline in San Diego County fell below $4 today. This is the lowest the price has been since early February. The Southern California Automobile Club and the Oil Price Information Service say the price has come down just over 30 cents a gallon in the past month and a half. You may have also noticed the LifeTech stock price went up today. San Diego's largest life sciences company is being sold for $13.6 billion. The buyer is Thermo Fisher. That's an instrumentation company from Massachusetts. LifeTech specializes in DNA sequencing and analysis. Thermo Fisher produces instruments and laboratory systems. The companies say that the purchase will lead to greater innovation. The local offices will remain open after the sale. The U.S. Supreme Court is mulling over a company's ability to own genes. Now, firms have been issued patents on human genes for 30 years, but opponents of the idea say it shouldn't be possible. Critics say that finding a new use for a product of nature should not be eligible for a patent. Supporters argue they need those patents to pay for billions of dollars of research into genes. Now, the court is expected to rule on the issue sometime over the summer. Undersized sea lion pups are swamping rescue centers along the Southern California coast. More than 1,100 of the marine mammals have been rescued since January. That's 10 times the number helped all of last year. Now federal officials are trying to figure out what's pushing the young animals to the brink. It's feeding time at SeaWorld's rescue center. Team members toss sardines to a group of sea lion pups. All of these pups were rescued along the San Diego coast. When they came here, they were starving. Some are bouncing back. Others continue to languish.
Just like us, when you don't feel good, you don't always feel like eating. These animals are so severely malnourished, they don't feel like eating either. within the first 2 to 3 days, when they start getting rehydrated, they start getting some of that nourishment that we're providing, they start showing us signs of a little bit more activity.
The Rescue Center's Jody Westberg loves seeing that. It means the pups are regaining their health, and that's her primary concern. She wants to get them back into the wild, but Westberg also wants to help find out what's going on.
When we bring them in, the most important thing is to get them a physical exam by our veterinary team, then to rehydrate them and start providing them nourishment.
Length, weight, and sex are all recorded. Blood, fecal, and urine samples are taken, and when needed, necropsies are performed. The information is being shared with federal officials. The National Marine Fisheries Service has declared the situation an unusual mortality event. They've put together a panel of researchers that's looking into things.
There's currently an investigation underway to look into the exact cause of the problem. Right now, we don't know what that cause is, but the leading hypothesis is that it's related to a food issue.
Hundreds of starving, undersized sea lions have been rescued from beaches, cliffs, and even restaurants along the Southern California coast. SeaWorld promises an unlimited capacity to help in San Diego County, but other rescue centers are feeling the strain. Some are turning away all but the most critically ill pups. Southwest Fisheries Science Center researcher Mark Lowry has studied sea lions since the 1980s. He collects and examines sea lion droppings to find out what the animals are eating. Lowry says it's typical for one type of food to dominate the sea lion diet when things are going well. Market squid are a staple, as evidenced by the squid beaks that he's recovered.
Just imagine a parrot beak. So you have like an upper beak and you have a lower beak that they sort of like fit into each other.
Lowry suspects he'll find a more diverse diet in the samples he's collecting this spring. That's what happened during a sea lion pup die-off in 2009, a year when El Nino moved the mammal's food supply away from breeding areas. But this year, there is no El Nino. Another possibility is that the current population of about 300,000 sea lions is just too large.
The ability of the environment to sustain a population level, it changes up and down. And so it's probably dropped down a little bit, and it's affecting the population. At least that's what I think is happening.
Sea lion pups along the Southern California coast shouldn't be having these kinds of problems. In fact, they should be back at their rookeries on islands just off the coast with their mothers nursing.
They shouldn't be weaning until April or May, and they're born out on the Channel Islands, which is, 40 to 60 miles off the coast, and they've left early.
Jeff Lake tracks the sea lion population for the National Marine Fisheries Service, and he says the situation has likely already claimed the lives of some 30,000 sea lion pups. That's nearly half of all the pups born last summer. The normal mortality rate is 15 to 20%.
There was an event in 2009 that occurred in spring when most of the pups are being born. And when that happened, it was 80% mortality of that cohort. But what the public didn't see it because they were so small that they actually died out on the islands.
Lake says he's also not sure that this event has crested. He says it could stretch into June when the next pupping season begins. Now, federal officials looking into the situation are still in the process of gathering data. They do say it could be several months before they can explain the cause of the current sea lion crisis. Food availability is the leading suspect, but disease has not yet been ruled out. Education leaders from around the country recently unveiled new science education standards. Peggy Pico has more on what the changes will mean for local classrooms.
The proposed next-generation science standards are designed to improve how science is taught in millions of classrooms throughout the country. A coalition of scientists, teachers, and 26 states, including California, developed the recommendations for sweeping changes in K through 12 science education. Nancy Taylor, executive director of San Diego Science Alliance, reviewed the standards, and John Spiegel, science coordinator with the County Office of Education, are here to fill us in on some of these changes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, how will science courses change as far as how they're being taught if this proposed recommendations go through?
Yeah, I think the big change that we're going to see is we're going to see science transform itself from less facts and information to more about the processes and the skills that students need to be a scientist.
So, for example, is it more hands-on, how you would go about, give me an example of how that might work.
More hands-on, more problem-solving, more use of and analysis of data and information that students are gathering as part of doing science.
So kind of teaching them how to be a scientist.
Correct.
Okay. And Nancy, I understand that climate change, which is already being taught in California schools, is considered a core concept in this. What is a core concept?
Well, a core concept in next generation science standards really represents a disciplinary set of core concepts that we build upon throughout a child's educational process. So, for instance, a core concept to support an understanding of climate change might be the weather cycle at an earlier grade, and become more sophisticated to understanding the natural mechanism of greenhouse gases, and then a more sophisticated level of looking at data in secondary
So sort of introducing it early, because I understand one of the recommendations is to introduce kind of climate change, weather, in middle schools.
That's correct. That's correct. In California, we have a little curriculum, the Education and the Environment Initiative, that is already doing that at many grade levels in California classrooms.
Another first, I understand, is a recommendation for engineering curriculum in the K through 12 grades. Why do you think we need that now?
What is happening in next generation science standards is really a pairing of engineering practices and scientific practices. So just as in science we inquire, in engineering we're thinking about designs for solutions, using data to help us think about new ways.
And do you think, and I'm thinking San Diego specifically, we have the biotech community here, do you think that we're losing out? Is this compared to some of this came about because kids here aren't getting the same education in engineering, math, science as kids in other nations?
Well, I think that's part of the goal of the next generation science standards, is to make sure our students don't lose out, that they're able to compete and have an interest to go into these science fields. And San Diego is very rich for the opportunities that are here, and we'd like our students to participate in that.
Are we lagging here in San Diego compared to, let's say, other districts either throughout the country or throughout the state?
I don't know if we're lagging. I know that we definitely need more students to pursue that route.
All right, the California State Board of Education is expected to approve this. My understanding is in November, but they also have to go through a public process. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my understanding is right now that before they go to the board, that there'll be a process for the public to provide input into the current standards and make recommendations, and then later in the summer the board will be introduced to the standards and will approve it or make their decision in November.
And I understand they can do that online, and folks can find that link on our website, kpbs.org. Nancy, do you think, let's say it all gets approved and it goes through, and these changes, math, science, engineering, it all goes through here in San Diego, do you think teachers are ready, or how are they preparing for this?
I think teachers are more than ready to embrace a new approach to science education that really will inspire them in the classroom to use different tools and technologies to help students inquire and explore these core disciplinary concepts, but also the students as well.
How long do you think, John, if these did get approved in the public hearings, everything went okay, how long before we'd actually see sort of the shift in classrooms here?
I would think we would start seeing the shift right away as far as learning about the practices and being able to start bringing those in, and then over the course of the next year or so beginning to do professional development and find curriculum that's going to help us to implement it more fully.
Well, as a science fan, I'm excited to see what happens. Thank you both so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
More than 2 years after the tsunami in Japan, one Japanese high school is getting back something it lost. It's a 20-foot boat that washed up last week in Crescent City, up in Northern California. City officials got the boat's name translated, then contacted their counterparts in Japan via Facebook.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next NewsHour, can a human gene be patented? The Supreme Court hears arguments. It's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
No more procrastination. Tax returns are due by midnight tonight. Now, the post office on Midway Drive in San Diego will be open until 11 o'clock to take your returns. We've got another day of drizzle in the forecast, but the Weather Service says things will start clearing up by the middle of the week. For the inland valleys, look for temperatures to reach the mid-70s by Thursday. The mountains will stay dry through the week, and for the deserts, look for windy conditions tomorrow, with temperatures rising through the week. Recapping tonight's top story, investigators are searching for whoever planted bombs at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. Two bombs exploded, killing 3 people and injuring more than 100. A White House official says it's being treated as a case of terrorism. The FBI has taken the lead in the investigation. At this point, they're not talking about any suspects. PBS NewsHour will have more on the investigation in just a couple of minutes, and our coverage of this story will continue through the evening online at kpbs.org and on KPBS Radio. And join us for the latest on Morning Edition on KPBS FM. Thanks very much for joining us. Have a good evening.